So here's this thing that happens, okay? There's this guy that comes up to Jesus and he's running and he's out of breath. And he runs up to Jesus out of breath and he says this, Lord, John chapter 11, the one you love is sick. Now I want you to think about this for a few seconds because he says the one that you love is sick. How many people, think about this for just a few seconds. When someone tells you that the one that you love is sick, and if someone were to tell you the one that you love got in a car accident, that circle would be a small circle. Who would you think about if someone came up to you and said, the one that you love is sick, or the one that you love got into a car accident, or the one that you love is in the hospital? Who would you think about? Because the one that you love, and without saying the name, it's just a few people in that circle. So it's amazing to me how this person comes up to Jesus, he's out of breath, and says, hey, Lord, the one that you love is sick. And this is a small circle, but Jesus knew who it was. Do you know who it was? Can you all tell me the name? Lazarus. Yes. Can you all say it on three? Lazarus. Yes. Lazarus. 1, 2, 3. Lazarus. He was talking about Lazarus. Lazarus, he was sick, and Jesus loved Lazarus. Jesus loved Lazarus so much that they only had to say the one that you love is sick. So what would you expect Jesus to do when the one that he loved is sick? I mean, Jesus was healing everybody. Yeah. Jesus was doing miracles. Jesus was opening the eyes of the blind. Yeah. He was opening the ears of the deaf. And he was doing so much that strangers would even touch him and he would get healed. So what would you expect Jesus to do with the one that he loved? What would you expect Jesus to do with the one that he loved if he was doing all this ministry and he was doing all these beautiful things and he was healing strangers and people that would touch him would just get healed? Let's keep reading. Verse 5. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. There were 3 siblings. Jesus loved. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. Whoa. Wait a minute. Some guy just came up to Jesus and said, the one that you love is sick. Jesus knew and understood who this was. And I mean, that's just pretty crazy right there as a description. Jesus was walking around healing a whole bunch of people, healing a whole bunch of strangers, doing a whole bunch of beautiful things for people that he didn't even know, people that didn't even know would touch Jesus and they would get healed. And then when the one that he loved is sick, Jesus like, oh, hold on, sit down. He was teaching. Somebody came up to him. And I can imagine all the disciples and all the people that were just listening to Jesus teach in that moment. All of the people that were just in front of Jesus possibly assumed that Jesus would get up, stop his teaching, and say, all right, let's go. We're going to go rescue Lazarus. But instead, I can imagine that the people that were there just get up and Jesus goes, sit down. And I can imagine that the response of these people hearing this, they were like, Jesus, we're not going to go? And Jesus is like, no, we're going to wait. Can you say we're going to wait? Sounds a little bit unfair, doesn't it? Sounds a little bit uncertain for Lazarus right now, doesn't it? Sounds a little bit confusing. Sounds a little bit unsure for Lazarus. Sounds a little bit complicated, doesn't it? Because you would expect that since he loved him, he would rescue him. And all those people that were there were going, but why? And Jesus was like, because I'm up to something that you don't understand. I'm up to something that you don't, and anyone doesn't expect. I'm up to something. So Martha and Mary, they're probably going to get mad at me. And they did. Martha and Mary were probably going to complain. And they possibly did, because they did complain. They did get angry. They did not understand. They misunderstood. But Jesus was like, but it's okay, because I'm up to something. I'm up to something that no one expects. I'm up to something that no one understands. I'm up to something that they have no clue. I'm just going to wreck their little faith. And so Lazarus, he gets sick. And he gets sicker. And he gets even more sick. And Lazarus died. Even though Jesus knew his name. Even though Jesus loved him. He died. And so this whole series, here's the question that we're going to be asking. What do you do when there's nothing you can do? What do you do when there's nothing you can do? And this is going to be the question that is going to be repeated, and it's going to be heard throughout these next couple weeks. This question is the question of, what do you do when there's nothing that you can do? What do you do when counseling doesn't seem to work and you feel stuck? What do you do when financially things aren't going well and you feel like you can't fix it? What do you do when a medical report comes in and it won't kill you, but it will change your life drastically? Or how about when you can't get into the school or the career that you've always wanted to do and get into, and there's nothing that you can do? What do you do when your dream can't come true and there's nothing you can do to fix that? What do you do when your parents are disappointed at you? What do you do when your friends are disappointed? What do you do when not only your parents and your friends are disappointed in you, but what do you do when you are disappointed in yourself and there's no way out and there's no way to fix it and there's no way through to go forward? What do you do when there's nothing that you can do? Here's the reality. You're in the dark room. And the dark room is confusing. And the dark room is complicated. In the dark room, you feel hopeless and you feel helpless. In the dark room, you feel uncertain. In the dark room, you feel unsure. In the dark room, you are confused. Now, what's this dark room thing? Well, let me explain it to you. We have a small device that controls our life. It's called a cell phone. And this small device controls our life. And it's interesting that one of the features in this small device is this, that it has a camera. And the thing about the camera is that you can take a picture and it's up immediately. Can you see immediately? Immediately. No time. You take a picture and there it is. You can see what you took a picture of immediately in a couple of seconds, not even seconds, milliseconds. I mean, like, it's like we're so obsessed with the whole picture thing. I mean, like, I think that they say that you take about 400, there's about 400 million pictures uploaded daily on social media platform, on one called Facebook. Can you imagine Instagram? Hashtag selfie is one of the most predominant hashtags, and it's because we're so in love with ourselves, and we're and after you took 100 of the same pictures under the same room, under the same lighting, with the same makeup, same shirt, same outfit, you still keep taking more, and it's because we just love the result of that button, right? And it's immediate. And what's so interesting is this, that after you take a picture, you can upload it to your social media platform, and it gets uploaded and it can go across the entire world in just a matter of seconds. It's incredible that it's so quick, it's so fast, it's so immediate. There is no process involved. All you gotta do is press a button, upload it, and there it goes. People in South Africa can see it, people in Europe can see it, people in China, Russia can see it, people in Central America, hey, that's where my parents are from. Okay. People all over the United States, Canada, it's just visible because it's so quick. But back in my day, back in the early 90s, things weren't as fast. And I know that you might not know this term, but 35 millimeter film? You have no clue, right? Yeah, this is past your time. You have no clue what the heck that is. Yeah, back in my day, back in the early 90s, I was born in the late 80s, there was this thing called the 35 millimeter film. And guess what? In order to take pictures, you had to buy a camera, but it wouldn't take pictures right away for you. You know what you have to do? You got to go buy that 35 millimeter film. And guess what? You had to put the film into the camera all by yourself. Wow. And the worst part of this whole process, which is now something cool because now kids that have no clue what the pain was to wait 6 days to see if your selfie was nice or not, you just have to pray and say, God, I hope that I looked fine. Yeah. See, now it's called retro and it's called cool and it's called fun. Back then it was called torture and pain. You don't know if you looked good or not. So here's what would happen. You would put your 35 millimeter film inside a little envelope and you would walk or SkyTrain or bus or drive if you drove to London Drugs. And you would drop off your 35 millimeter film in an envelope to London Drugs. And then once the cashier person took your film in the envelope, it would go into an abyss. And you would not see it for the next 6-7 days. And that's where you would pray and you would fast and you would say, God, please, I hope something good comes out of this. Because I know that in the good and in the bad, you work in my favor. In Jesus' name, amen. And so catch this. So when they would take it to the back room, they would take it into what we call the... Good job. Thank you. They would take it back into the room called the... Good job. They would take it into the dark room, and this is where this whole series came out of. Here's what would happen in the dark room. They would take the film back, they'd put it into a dark room, they'd close the door, they'd make sure that the room was dark. Good job. I'm so glad you picked that up, because if you would have delayed, I swear I would have had to pray for healing today. Altar call, come up, we're gonna lay hands. And it would start a process. And in the process, there was there's 9 chemicals that these pictures, these films would have to be dipped in order for the picture to finally be developed. Yeah. But the problem was this: if you were to open the door of the dark room prematurely and light would come in, it would stop the process of development. Come on now. Yeah. And then the negative wouldn't work, and then out of the negative being destroyed, you cannot get a positive, you can't get the picture, sorry. And the whole process gets wrecked, and guess what? The end result will never be the same. So it was necessary for the door to remain closed so that the dark room could stay dark throughout the process. Because any premature lighting that would come in or comes into these dark rooms wrecks the final image. That's right. Because there's development in the dark room. When you're in the dark room of life, you will feel uncertain, uncomfortable, confused, and you will feel stuck. Isn't that what some of you feel? Isn't that what you might be going through right now? You feel uncertain. You feel uncomfortable. You feel confused. You feel stuck, and it's like, I can't get out of this situation. I can't get out of this mood. I can't get out of this season. I can't understand it. I can't comprehend it. I can't grasp it. I'm confused. I'm stuck. And there's nothing that you can do. And here's the thing about the dark room, that God will use a dark room, but there are temptations in the dark room. And let me tell you a few temptations. The temptation in the dark room is to run. That's right. You want to abandon the dark room. You want to get out of the dark room. You want to ditch the process. You want to go to the door of the dark room and open it so that you can see your own light, not the light of Christ. And sometimes it's not to run or abandon, but sometimes it's to do something stupid, like drink ourselves into oblivion or get high enough to numb ourselves to get through. Yeah. The temptation's real, that because it's uncomfortable, it's uncertain. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like uncomfortability. We don't like to be we don't like the moments of confusion, and it's hard. Yeah. So we have this temptation that we want to run, or we want to drink our problems away or get high to forget and get numb and to just go through life. But these things just complicate everything more. Because you later find yourself in other circumstances that you can do nothing about. It's true. You're in the dark room. You're in the dark room. But see, running or doing something stupid, it's not the only temptation. Let me tell you another temptation. Another temptation of when we're in the dark room is to get jealous. Because it seems like everyone else's life is going perfect, but yours. Yeah. It seems like everybody else is doing better. It seems like everybody else is being blessed. And it feels like when you're at your lowest, all the closest people around you, they're at their highest. So it becomes easy to get jealous. It becomes easy to get envious and possibly even resentful. And you're wondering, like, wow, man, how could she, like, man, him, why does God bless him? Like, we're the same age, and look what God's doing through his life, and my life, like, I could barely make a sandwich, right? And you start comparing, and you start, I can't talk to people, I can't math like some other people math, right? I'm not in school. I don't even know what I want to do with my own life. I don't even know what career to choose. And you start comparing, and you start getting jealous, and you start becoming envious, and you start being resentful, and you just start looking at other people. And if you're a theist, meaning you believe in a higher deity, or you believe in a spiritual figure or God, your temptation sometimes might be, when you're in the dark room, is to get angry at God. And you say things like this: God, if you say that you are who you say you are, wouldn't you do something about this? Wouldn't you fix this? Like if you say who you say you are, wouldn't you have corrected this? Wouldn't you have helped a brother out? Wouldn't you? I mean, don't you say that you love him? He loves us. I mean, we sing that song, How He Loves Us. Oh, how he loves us. Someone asked, who's Howie? How he loves us, how God loves us, and we're wondering, hey, can't you fix this thing? Because I thought that you were all powerful, almighty, all this. But you ain't fixing it for me. You're in the dark room. And sometimes it might even seem like God is giving everyone else around you a good life, but not you. And so it becomes easy to want to run and abandon. It feels easy to get jealous and envious and compare. It becomes easy to sometimes even possibly be mad at God. And I'm not saying be mad at God where you start yelling at God and cussing God out at the SkyTrain and people are like, who the heck is he talking to? I'm not saying that, not externally, but sometimes you're mad at God internally. And sometimes you're mad at God internally and you don't even know it. But it's because you notice that God is giving everybody else a good life. And our problem is this, that we compare our real life with high reels. And you're looking at everybody's Instagram, and like I told you before, I asked a friend of mine, hey, your pictures look so fun on Instagram. It looked like your hangout went well. And this is what my friend said, no, it's actually pretty boring. I'm like, and then right away, in the front seat of that car, I had like a moment. I'm like, oh, it's so true. It's so true. That happy couples on social media are like miserable couples in real life. Happy friendship circles feel exciting and look exciting, but man, they're miserable and boring to death. And we're trying to compare our real life moments stuck in a room because all our best friends, which is only one, is busy and you got nothing else to do. You're looking through your Instagram feed and you're watching everybody else have fun. You're looking at their Instagram stories. Man, they staged that whole thing. They ain't having fun. Well, maybe they are, but not all the time. And we compare our highlight reels, their highlight reels, with our real life. And we're looking and we're comparing and we forget to think and remind ourselves, we're in the dark room. So here's the question one more time. What do you do when there's nothing that you can do? What do you do when there's nothing that you can't do? You can't help it, you can't fix it, you can't change it, you can't move it. What do you do when there's nothing that you can do? And outside of these temptations, there are other questions that pop. Some of the questions that you might go through in your dark room are things like this. Will I ever be happy again? Because you're in the middle of a dark room and it feels like it's forever, and you feel that maybe it's possibly been forever, and there's no sign that there's a light coming. And you go, will I ever be happy again? When we're in the middle of a problem, it feels like we're never going to be happy again. And we feel that the pain, we feel that the moment, we feel that the trial, we feel that the thing that we're going through is going to last forever. And so we ask ourselves, will I ever be happy again? And here's another question. How can anything good come from this? Like I'm in a miserable place. Nothing good can come out of this. And we're so pessimistic. We're so negative. We're so dark. But it's because you're in a dark room. And here's another question that is, I think, the most important question that sometimes pops in our heads is this. Is there a point in continuing? And this is what the enemy uses a lot to discourage you to leave your dark room prematurely. Because he knows that if you seek the spotlight that you've been looking for, or the solution that you think will help it, or the relationship that you think will make you feel better, he knows that it's only going to destroy you. It's only going to destroy you. Listen to me. If you leave your process, you abandon process, and you go and reach for that door that is in your dark room, in that process, I'm going to tell you something. Pay attention to me. And I want you to zone back in. If you haven't been zoned in, zone into this part. You reach for that door, and you abandon process. That light that you think is the light that you're craving so much, and it's what you think you want. It's not what you really want. That light will destroy you. Don't abandon your process. And so sometimes we go, is there a point in continuing? And we say things like, there's no point in staying integrous. There's no point for me to stay moral. There's no point for me to be honest. There's no point of doing all the right things all the time. I know that the wrong options will make it worse for me, but I am so sick and tired of doing the right thing. Like, what's the point? Have you been there? Yeah. What's the point of continuing? What's the point of me staying obedient? What's the point of me doing the right thing all the time? What's the point of me staying moral? What's the point of me staying integrous? What's the point of me staying submissive? What's the point of me doing this and doing the right thing and staying with the right thing? What's the point? Because when you're in the dark room, it almost feels like there is no point.
Yeah, that's right.
Because all you see is darkness and you're like, ah! I don't really do that in my dark room, but you know what I mean, right? I'm trying to express what happens in here. And we go, I don't see a reward. And I'm possibly living a fantasy, hoping on something that is false, because some of you are like, but Pastor said if I stay in the dark room, it's going to be good for me in the end. And then you start thinking thoughts, what if that's all a fantasy? What if that's even real for me to stay integrous? For me to stay righteous, for me to stay holy, for me to stay pure, for me to not give my virginity away, which is what some of you high schoolers are battling with. Well, what's the point of me? What's the point? And we start asking this question. Is there a point in continuing? You're in the dark room. You're in the dark room. And our immediate thought after these questions is this. Here's our immediate thought after we ask these questions. God is absent. God is apathetic. And God is angry. It's either he's absent, he's apathetic about this whole situation, or he's angry. But here's what I want you to understand. While you're in the dark room, God is not absent. He is not apathetic, and he is not angry with you. God is not absent. Because we go, God's absent, he's not here. And we feel that God abandoned. We feel like God left you. And we feel that God is no longer there. We can't feel God anymore. And we possibly think, he's not here, he's absent. Or we think he's apathetic. We go, God is probably too busy dealing with other important things. Or God is too busy probably dealing with or helping important people. God possibly just doesn't care. Or if it's not absent or apathetic, we think that he is angry and we go, what I'm going through is because God is punishing me. Let me tell you the truth. God is not absent. God is not apathetic, and God is not angry. He loves you. How he loves you. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you. He's there. He's present. He cares, and he's gracious. He's present. He cares, and he's full of grace. A grace that could never add up to be somebody he still wants. It's a grace you could never add up to be somebody he still wants. He's not angry. He's not apathetic. And God is not absent. And when we read what the heroes of our faith went through, the people that we read about in the Bible, we realize they had no disconnect between God and the dark room. It's almost as if they had no conflict with the dark rooms of life. They were able to live in those confusing, unsure, uncertain, uncomfortable dark room moments, and they would still be able to do amazing things. It's incredible that the people that we read about, the heroes that we study, the heroes that we sometimes admire, like Moses, Abraham, I don't know, all the other people that were there, like Deborah in the book of Judges, we see Ruth, all these amazing biblical figures that were actual historical figures. They were not made up, they're not make-believe, they were real. Yeah. These people had no problem connecting God and the dark room. There was no disconnect between the dark room and God. They understood that God and the dark room worked together. And what's interesting is this, that while they were in their dark room, in their uncertainty, in their unsureness, in their pain, in their confusion, while they were in the dark room, catch this, and I want you to pay attention, watch this. They were still able to do amazing things.
Come on.
See, they didn't have this cheap gospel that God was going to fix it all for you.
Yeah. Come on.
They didn't have this weird cheap gospel that Christians or people that follow Jesus have no problems. Jesus actually taught the opposite. He said, in this world, you will have problems. You will have trials. You will have hard moments. Yeah. But don't fear. I've overcome. Amen. So it's interesting that these people that we read about had no problem connecting. They did not disconnect the dark room from God, and they did not feel like God abandoned them. Instead, they've understood how to do amazing things, and they still They accomplished some of the most life-changing things, not only in their era, but in the eras to come. And the Apostle Paul, he was one of those guys. Paul was a guy that was an extremist. And if you know the Apostle Paul, you know that he's not just a biblical figure, he's a historical figure, because here's what Paul used to do. Paul used to kill all the Christians, and he was an extremist because he's like, I'm going to kill them all. And he did, and he put them in jail, and he persecuted them. And then he gets to encounter Jesus, and Jesus flips his flow. And then after Jesus flips his flow, he goes, I'm going to win them all. And he got obsessed with winning he got obsessed with winning as many people, as all the people in the world for Christ. So it's interesting. This guy was just weird. He was an extremist. I want to kill them all, but then he encounters Jesus. He's like, I'm going to win them all. And he started planting churches because that was the vision that God gave him. And as he's planting churches, as he's building momentum, as he's moving forward, as things are looking good, at his peak, he gets put in prison.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And prisons had no electricity, so this guy was literally in a dark room.
Yeah.
At his peak, he was crushing it. He was moving things forward. He had planted churches all over the place. And he was building his momentum, and he was just building the dream, his dream. He was doing great. And then all of a sudden, as he's doing great, as people are coming to follow and know Jesus Christ, he gets put into prison. Can you say it? It's the dark room, but it's okay. I didn't set you up properly. He got put into his dark room. And as he's in his dark room, he doesn't complain. He doesn't cry. He doesn't weep. He doesn't get jealous and goes, why isn't Peter in here? Why isn't James in here? He doesn't faint, become hopeless. Instead, he says, I'm going to do something. And he starts doing something. He's in his dark room, and instead of complaining, getting angry at God, getting jealous of other people, instead of saying, I'm going to break out of this prison, he says, I'm going to do something. And here's what he does. Here's what he does. You ready now?
Yeah.
Do you really want to know what he does?
Yeah.
Here's what he does. Here's what he does. He starts to write letters. He's like, I'm going to do something. I'm not going to just stay here and rot. I'm going to do something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write letters to the churches that I've planted so that I can help them out. And little did this guy know. Little did he know. I mean, he's in his dark room and he's like, I got to do something. He starts writing, and to make things worse, he starts losing his sight in his dark room. So he has to get somebody, and he starts dictating. Somebody else starts writing for him. That's a good friend. I think it was Luke. He starts writing. And little did he know that literally, through his literature, he was going to shape and change the world, so that 2,000 and something years later, here we are today in Crave Church, studying what this guy wrote. In his mind, he's just like, I'm in a dark room with nothing to do, so I'm just going to write a few letters to my friends in the churches that I planted. But in reality, he was shaping the world. This is where we get the letters that we sometimes read today here in church. And they call them the prison epistles, or the epistles of prisons, or the letters of prisons, the prison letters. Put them up, and here they are. Next slide, please. It's the book of Ephesians, Philippians, Philemon, Colossians. It's what we study today. You know where we get these things from? You know where? It's amazing that we live by these writings. And it happened in a dark room. His writings are so important. What he wrote is so important and powerful that it got translated into different languages. Like, what are the odds that letters written in a Roman prison would even survive the first century, much less become literature that shaped the Western culture? What are the odds that what this guy wrote in a Roman prison was going to shape the Western culture? What are the odds? What are the odds that it would even make it past the first century?
Come on now.
His letters were literally undermining the Roman Empire, and things that emperors wrote, things that they would preserve, things that they would multiply in copies, things that people put in vaults that emperors wrote are long lost and forgotten. Yet the Apostle Paul is one prisoner with one copy, said, deliver this, and we're still reading it today. Incredible. Incredible. And here's the point that I want you to understand. Here's how this applies to you. The Apostle Paul had no idea what hung in the balance of him deciding to remain faithful when remaining faithful was difficult. The Apostle Paul had no clue. He had no clue what hung in the balance of his decision to remain faithful when remaining faithful was difficult. You know what hung in the balance of him remaining faithful when it was difficult to remain faithful? You know what hung in the balance? You and me. Us.
So good.
Yet, as he's writing in his little prison, while he's in his dark room, he had no clue. So this makes you want to pose the question: what could hang on the balance of my decision to remain faithful when remaining faithful is difficult?
That's so good.
What hangs on the balance of your decision, of my decision, to remain faithful when remaining faithful is difficult? Because the truth is this. Here's the truth. You have no idea what or who hangs in the balance of your decision to remain faithful when everything around you says, be faithless.
That's right.
You have no idea what or who hangs in the balance of your decision to remain faithful when everything around you is saying, be faithless.
So true.
While he's in his prison, while he's in his dark room, this guy writing these little letters had no clue. You and I would be here today, this Sunday, speaking about this.
It's true. It's true.
And see, here's the thing, that he was a prisoner while this emperor called Nero was in rulership. And all Paul had to do was say, I believe in Nero, I don't believe in Jesus, and I will stop speaking on Jesus' behalf. That's all he had to do to leave his dark room. You know what it took? Just a bit of breath with the flexing of his vocal cords to get out of the dark room. Wow.
Yeah.
Something so simple. He could have left his dark room by just simply saying, I don't believe in Jesus. I believe in Nero. But you and I hung in the balance. You have no idea what God will do through your faithfulness when everything around you says, there's no point in being moral no more, bro. There's no point in being faithful. There's no point in staying. Just leave. There's no point in telling the truth. There's no point in being obedient. There's no point in saying yes to God because there's no win. But the reality is, you have no idea what hangs on the balance. And here's the challenge. Are you ready for the challenge? Here's the challenge. The challenge is, you'll never know unless you're willing to remain faithful
That's good.
while you're in your dark room.
So true.
Can you remain faithful when you don't understand? Will you remain faithful when it's complicated? Will you remain faithful when that door's not opening yet because the process ain't done yet? Will you remain faithful in your dark room when everybody around you is saying, abort, 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 just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it? Will you remain faithful when that voice inside of you is saying, don't do it, don't obey, don't be truthful, don't be honest, don't be integrous, don't be obedient, just don't? Because the truth is this: you will never know who or what hangs on the balance. Because the challenge is this: you'll never know until you do it. And sometimes what hangs in the balance is not worth you aborting.
That's right.
It's not worth you aborting.
That's right.
You don't know who or what hangs on the balance of your decision to remain faithful in your dark room when everything around you is telling you, be faithless. We have no idea. So back to Lazarus. After Lazarus died, here's what Jesus said to everybody that was freaking out. Lazarus is dead. It's like, thank you, Jesus. We would have never guessed it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And obviously, Jesus was not just trying to state the obvious. He was just trying to set it up. He was trying to set something up to flip their flow. And here's what he says. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there. What? What? I thought you said that you loved them. Aren't you supposed to rescue those you love? Aren't you supposed to answer the questions to those you love? Aren't you supposed to give special access to who you are to those you love? Aren't you supposed to heal those you love? Aren't you supposed to come right away for those you love? Like this is totally countercultural because you said you loved them, but now you're saying that you're glad that you weren't there, and then he died. He died. And now Lazarus is literally in a dark room called his tomb. Like you're supposed to love and rescue and make people feel better if you love them. How he loves us. Oh. Believe it or not, he loves my voice, even though I cracked. But watch what he says now. Watch what he says this. For your sake, I'm glad I was not there. So that you may believe. Wow. Wow. He didn't rescue them. He didn't come. Watch this. On time. And this is what so many of you are battling with right now. You feel like God is not showing up on time, but he ain't on your time. He's on his time. And he does it because he's up to something that you don't expect. He's doing it even though you don't understand it. He's doing it even though you might get mad, even though you might complain, even though you might get upset a little bit. Just don't leave and be like, you know what, forget you, God. Don't leave, because that's what the enemy wants. He wants you to abort your dark room. So he says, I did it so that you may believe. So Jesus shows up after he was dead for 4 days and everyone's complaining. If you would have been here, he wouldn't have died. And Lazarus would still be alive. And this is where Jesus just shifts everyone's paradigm on faith. This is where Jesus comes in. He just wrecks them. And he came in like a wrecking ball. And he speaks to a dead man.
Come on.
And this dead man comes to life. Wow. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. So here's your lesson. Here's your lesson. Don't confuse God's apparent apathy for absence in your dark room. Don't confuse God's apparent apathy, absence, for apathy in your dark room. It's when it feels like he's absent, he's not. He's there. When it feels like he doesn't care, be aware. He's up to something. And he's working. Because oftentimes, God is working while you're in the dark room. Oftentimes, God does his best work when you're in your dark room. So your unanswered prayer doesn't mean that God isn't listening. You're just in a dark room. God is not absent. God isn't apathetic. God isn't angry either. God is just at work. And the last thing you want to do is hit the abort button and open the door of your dark room. Because God always uses the dark room not to destroy you, but to develop you. So here's a question. What do you do to find your inside light when everything around you on the outside is dark? What do you do? What do you do to find contentment while you're in your dark room? Contentment is to be at ease with everything. Not be happy because it's all happening. Not saying, I want more problems. Not that. But when there's problems, you're fine. What do you do to find that inner light in here when everything on the outside is dark? And the question of this series is, what do you do when there's nothing you can do? Well, you got to come back next week and we're going to look at it. And we'll pick it up from here. Amen? Let's give God.
Thank you for watching our weekly talk at Crave Church. A new sermon will be released every week, so make sure you subscribe and turn on your post notifications. With that, you'll be notified each time we upload a new sermon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.